So in this video we're going to be creating an AI controller class. By the end of it you'll have a couple of different AI tanks placed in the scene, and when we play the game your player will spawn in at the player start point, and in the logs, if you look down in the output log at the bottom of the screen, you'll see that we'll be reporting that the AI controller, which we'll be creating, is possessing a couple of the tanks and that we are possessing a third. So good news, we'll see you in there. So before we go any deeper into the aiming architecture, let's take a look at the basics of the tank AI controller. So that's kind of analogous to the tank player controller. The players, us, will possess the tank that is spawned at the player start point. The rest of the tanks, the AI control tanks, we'll be placing into the game, in this game anyway, at design time. We'll just drop the tanks in. Of course, they could be spawned in as well at playtime. So let's take a look at how that's going to work. First thing we're going to need is a tank AI controller class. Now this is a little bit different. We're going to do this, obviously C++ classes, add new C++ class. So go ahead and do that. But you won't find it here. You won't find the AI controller in this standard list. So you need to click Show All Classes in order to find it. And we're looking for AI controller, which is a child of controller, just like the player controller was. So we have actor, controller, and then under that there's player controller and AI controller. So we're going to go for a new C++ class based on the AI controller, and we're going to extend its functionality. Cool. What are we going to call it? Well, let's be conventional. Let's go tank AI controller, leaving the public checkbox ticked. For now, we're going to do that for the entire section, just while you get used to just the fact that it separates your files into public and private, and create your class. And let's see what goods it comes up with. So what I'm going to be showing you in this video is how to, as I said at the beginning, how to make an AI controller, which we're doing now. Once that's done, we're going to look at how to assign that AI controller to the, just do a recompile. I don't know why it wants to recompile. Let's see what happens. We're going to assign the AI controller to the tank, and then we're going to get you logging out to show that possession has happened. So I've got a file compilation error. Let's have a look. C++25. Let's see what my problem is here. I've got a Z on the end of a line. So just to help you out, by the way, if you see something like unexpected end of file, then look out for dodgy stuff, like a missing character. So I had a Z on the end. It didn't like that. Let's go ahead and recompile. So yeah, we make an AI controller class. We're going to tell the tank what its AI controller class is, and then I'll get you to do the logging that we did on the player controller over here on the AI controller, so that all tanks report in on the log for us to say that they have been appropriately possessed. So the game will play now. The player controller is possessing tank BPC44, which is the tank right in front of me. The other tank in the scene is not possessed by an AI controller yet. You may ask, how on earth do you do that? Well, let me show you. We've got one tank, remember, one unified tank for both us and the player controller. So it's going to be on the tank that we set this. So here's the tank blueprint. And we're not really interested in the input setup or the event graph. In fact, just to throw you off the scent, I'll go back to the construction script. And I'm going to expand out the details panel of the tank blueprint. This is where we want to go. Right. So do we auto-possess the player in general? No, not in general. We do not. We leave that as it is. Do we auto-possess the AI with AI? So this is really what it's saying. Do we auto-possess with the player? Well, no, not all the tanks. Only one tank, yeah? Only the one tank that's right in front of us. And that's already working. That's already being auto-possessed with the player because, just to remind you why, because the game mode blueprint tells it to here, tells it that this is the player controller class and that this is the tank. All right, so, oh, I just closed Unreal. That wasn't very clever. So what's the next thing? The next thing is, if a tank's in the world and it's not being possessed by the player, it's going to be possessed by the AI. So that's what we're doing. We're telling the tank blueprint that we want actors that are placed in pawns, or actors or tanks that are placed in the world, to be possessed by the AI. The final thing we have to do is tell it which class, not just the standard AI controller, but with the tank AI controller. That's the thing that is going to do it. Later on, we're going to go the other way this time. We're going to make a blueprint class later, and then, if we need to, and then change this to point to the blueprint class. But we don't need the blueprint right now. We're only going to need the blueprint if we have some parameters we want to tweak or some assets we want to reference. But for now, we can do this in pure C++. Previously, in the player controller, we created the blueprint class first, and then when we needed it, we added a C++ class and reparented it. In this case, we're creating a C++ class first, and then if we need it, we'll create a blueprint class later. Cool. So there we have pointed it to the AI controller class. Let's compile and play the game. Now, another way to get out of the game, apart from F8 to depossess, is Shift F1. That will give you your mouse back. All right, now you can then go into the world outliner and we can have a little look at what's going on. We've got tank BP20, we have tank BP, so there's a couple of tanks in the world here. In fact, I will depossess with F8, then I can select tanks. Tank BP20 is possessed by the tank player controller. How about this guy over here, this other tank, tank underscore BP? Does he have an AI controller on him yet? Yes, he does. Look, tank AI controller. You see that right above it? So we have an AI controller possessing that tank. That is pretty cool. So I have a challenge for you now that we've done that. What I want you to do is to log the possessed tank for the AI controller. Use similar code to what we did in the previous video on our player controller. This will make sure that you understood it all. Try placing some more tanks in the level once you've got it working for one. And what you should find is that you get a log entry for each tank saying that an AI controller is possessed and then the tank designator, the tank ID. All right, go ahead, pause the video and see if you can make the same type of logging work for the AI controller now. Awesome, welcome back. Well, I said it's going to be similar. I hope it's going to be very similar to what we did in the player controller. So in the player controller, we needed a begin play to do this. So I think that in the AI controller, we are going to need something very similar. So let's go ahead into the tank AI controller header file and give ourselves a begin playback just like that. Now, how do I know that's going to work? Well, actually, the inheritance for the controller is exactly the same, isn't it? If we look at the class viewer and we go to controller, of course, sorry, Mac people, you can't do this, but PC people can now turn off actors only. We go controller, AI controller, but you'll remember that you've also got player controller, you see, both under controller. So it's got the same inheritance. They're both children of actor, so therefore we can go ahead and say override the begin play. Cool. Well, let's also take a leaf out of the book of the player controller for the rest of this. In fact, we can pretty much do exactly the same thing. Let's go ahead and do that. Tank AI controller.cpp. By the way, from the header file, you can right click and say toggle header stroke code file in Visual Studio. We'll take you right there. So with that code pasted in, hoping that we can do things exactly the same way, we just need to change player controller to AI controller. Let's see what happens. Let's go ahead back to Unreal, see if we can compile that. Now, I've heavy-handedly cut and pasted it. In fact, I've so heavy-handedly cut and pasted it, I know it's not going to work because, look, I'm saying AI player controller when I should be saying AI controller here. So I know that that compiler is going to fail. That was too hasty. Let's try again. So obviously, when you cut and paste code from one class to the other, because of the nuances of C++, it fully qualifies the class names, and that's not going to work. So I've still got a problem. Get control tank is not defined, and that's simply because I've used this get control tank method here, but I never declared it in the header file. So we'll do that as well. We'll have a get control tank on both, at least for now. We may not end up with those at the end. There's your getter, your constant getter. Let's try again. So this method of just compiling and compiling until something runs is fine when your code base is small and the compilation is fast. But if it's not, then it's not a great strategy really long term. You probably want to look at your code a little bit more carefully. But I'm just going to go through this way of doing it for you for now, just for fun. So on the 18, I'm missing a semicolon. And that's because I'm not hash including tank here. Okay, strange error for that, isn't it? It's just it doesn't understand a tank. It's good to see a variety of different errors, I think, because you're going to get them when you write your own code. And if I just give you totally clinical, clean examples, then I think that it's going to be detrimental to the learning. So there you go. Now let's stop the game and play it. Oh, look at that. AI controller not possessing a tank, player controller not possessing a tank. So that old chestnut. The first thing I'm going to check is that the tank blueprint, see, the parent class has gone back again. I'm not sure what's going on with my machine here, why it keeps going back, but I'm going to patiently set it once more back to tank. I don't think you'll be having this problem. I'm going to recompile, and if it still doesn't save it for some reason, I'll save it out, then I'll look at a solution. But let's just go ahead. There you go. AI controller possessing one tank, the other controller is possessing the other. Let's just check those IDs against the content browser, the world outliner rather. These guys go together. And then the tank AI controller 5 is possessing tank BP there. So, yeah, you have to hover over to be sure. And really to be sure, you have to actually depossess with F8, click the tank to be sure that it's tank BP6, hover over it in the World Outliner, shows you that it's BP_569, and then you can see that the AI controller is indeed possessing the correct one. Okay, so let's drop another tank in just to finish off that challenge. Now this gets really easy because we've got a tank blueprint. We can just drop another one in the world there, click play. I'm just going to clear this log, right-click, clear log. Now you get two messages, two AI controllers possessing two different tanks, and the player controller possessing the one in the foreground. Again, to check the suggestion, you F8 to come out, click on the tank, go to the World Outliner, hover over it. It's designated 215. In this case, it's actually in the hierarchy in the World Outliner as well, whereas these guys you need to hover to see. And you can see that all the right things are being possessed by the right player controllers. So that is an absolute triumph. Congratulations. You now know how to place things in the world and have them possessed by AI or by the player. And let's continue this exciting journey towards a working tank game.